faction?
Well, you know, everything is relative. The Democrats actually rate better than the Republicans in the House of Representatives, but
much better.
None of us, I think, break 20. So that's pretty pathetic. And I think it's due to the fact that they look at Congress, especially the House, and they say, why can't we get anything done? And frankly, I think Mike and I would agree with that. Why can't we? And I believe that if John Boehner would just call a few bills, like the immigration bill, that we would get something done, that it would pass.
Actually, he has made some comments recently to the effect that he might be open to some of that. But Congressman Quigley, one glimmer of bipartisanship that Congresswoman Schakowsky just alluded to was the fact that there was a bipartisan support for the budget bill. You voted in favor of that bill. The Congresswoman voted against it. First of all, why did you vote for it?
Well, I didn't want us to get in a position where there was a potential for another shutdown or the would stop the function. So I supported the measure. And it should be noted that even during the worst of the shutdown, I believe that any semblance of a compromise would have passed if it had gotten to the floor. It was finally that Speaker Boehner decided he was going to let this get to the floor, that something happened. I still think the majority of the House would pass most comprehensive legislation on immigration, on other matters, if the Speaker would just let those matters get to the floor.
And Congresswoman, why did you not support that budget bill?
The deal breaker for me was that the Merry Christmas from the GOP was to end unemployment insurance for 1.3 million Americans.
It was the extension of additional benefits.
That's right. They ended for those many people, and every week that we don't do anything, about 72,000 more Americans are going to be without those benefits. We could have done that, and I think we should have, and I hope that we will as soon as we get back. The Senate is actually going to take a vote on the extension of unemployment benefits, and I hope that will help move the House, should it pass, and I think it will, to do the same quickly.
Now, we alluded to the whole notion of bipartisanship, and a few weeks ago, John Boehner famously had this eruption where he took on some elements of his party, the most conservative elements of the party, and kind of ripped into them. Congressman Quigley, is that a potential sea change in the influence of the so-called Tea Party faction?
Well, we're going to find out really soon. Understand, we're not through with this budget problem yet. The budget part is done. Now it goes over to the appropriations side. We've only got a couple weeks until we face that same shutdown. And as Speaker Boehner buckles, we will face that potential that the tip of the dog's tail will wag the body politic. And then shortly thereafter, Secretary Lewis informed us that we also face that debt ceiling again. He has to stiffen up and decide what's best on a compromise basis to keep this government moving forward.
Congresswoman, what did you make of the Speaker's statement where he was criticizing some of the outside groups that seem to have so much influence among his most conservative members?
Well, I certainly think it was a positive sign. He was not about to go through another shutdown right then before the holidays. He wanted to get a bipartisan budget deal. That was a good sign. But as Mike said, now we have to, that's just the budget agreement. Now the actual appropriations go into effect, and that's January 15th, a deadline that there actually have to be appropriations. Mike is on that committee. But you know, even with this agreement, domestic spending is down about 15% under what it was in 2010. And so, you know, I'm hoping that we're going to be able to fund some of the needed programs like infrastructure and scientific research.
You know, there are a couple of issues from this deal that are getting a lot of attention. The unemployment benefits being cut, which you alluded to, and cost of living benefits being pared down for military retirees. And there's a move afoot, maybe, to do something about that. Congressman Quigley, do you expect that issue regarding the cost of living increases for the military for there to be some action on that?
I think there will be in the Appropriations Committee. The question is, how much time do we have to do it before this January 15th deadline? You may see a continuing resolution for a short period of time while this gets hammered out. We're hoping that because we're actually appropriating for the first time under Speaker Boehner's tenure, we'll be able to address issues just like that.
Yeah, Congressman Schakowsky, you just touched on this, but back to the issue of the borrowing limit. Just how real is the potential for another shutdown when that comes up? And that's supposed to February or
Sure.
early March.
Congressman Paul Ryan said that we have to decide, he means among the Republicans, just what we're going to get to raise the debt ceiling. Everyone should understand that raising the debt ceiling means that the United States of America can pay the bills that have already been incurred. This isn't an authorization for new spending. It's an authorization to pay the bills. And the very idea that they want to hold the full faith and credit of the United States hostage in order to get something, I think is really unacceptable.
And I strongly support dealing with our debt and deficit issue, but I remind my colleagues on the other side of the aisle that President Reagan raised the debt ceiling at least 18 times.
And yet, the other side of the argument is that if these drastic and dramatic measures are not taken, then nothing will happen in terms of limiting the size of government. Your response to that?
You know, here's my response. Not one penny in this budget agreement would close a single loophole, would ask the wealthiest Americans to pay more. It took money from federal employees, from retired military. Is this really the direction that we want to go in? It is time for us to look at fairness when we talk about how we're going to fund the government and do what we really need to do.
And when we had a long-term budget deal proposed, the Simpson-Bowles, the Tea Party people were absent. If they're serious about dealing with a long-term debt and deficit, you don't do it threatening the full faith and credit of the United States. You do it in an agreement on a bipartisan basis on both sides of Congress that the President will sign into law.
Let's talk about Obamacare, which is the President himself admits that the launch was a fiasco. And yesterday, as of yesterday, roughly 2.1 million Americans were able to sign up for Obamacare. What are you hearing from your constituents, Congresswoman?
You know, I'm hearing great stories. They keep coming in every day, people who finally can get health care. This is a great day in America today. It's not just the 2.1 million people who signed up through the exchanges. 3.9 million people have extended Medicaid or the Child Health Insurance Program. 3.1 million young people are on their parents' policies. Add it all up, we get to 9 million people who have been benefited.
Yet the expectation was that at this point 7 million people would have signed up.
But you know what? That's because the rollout was so bad, but we have been on track now with the December numbers, and I believe that by March 31st, no, it's 7 million by March 31st is the projection. I have a feeling we can get there.
But I've got to have the feeling. I've got to believe that some of your constituents have called you and said, wait a minute. The President said that if I liked my insurance, I would be able to keep it. Congressman, quickly, how do you respond to those calls?
I remind folks why we did this in the first place, and that Medicare Part D's rollout was a disaster that required legislative cures. Instead of trying to cure some of the problems the rollout had, the Republicans were trying to just kill the bill, repealing and defunding it 42 times. Let's remember why we did this. 47 million Americans without health insurance. There were lifetime caps. If you had a pre-existing condition, you could be denied. You could be charged much, much more. Children who were graduating from college had no insurance and they couldn't go on their parents. Senior citizens faced prescription drug costs that they couldn't afford. They had choices between buying food and paying for the prescription drugs.
Women were discriminated against and charged an average of 48% more for health care. So that ended today.
I don't deny the problems, and they're maddening. But we have to remember that a program of this magnitude takes time to roll out, and it's frustrating that it took place, and there's no excuse. But it's going to get better.
What are the problems with the rollout of Obamacare due to the President's credibility in terms of advancing the Democratic agenda, which includes immigration reform, it includes early childhood education, the expansion of that? How much juice does the President have right now?
Well, you know, immediately after the shutdown, Democrats were riding high, and then the terrible rollout, and Democratic opinion and that of the President dropped. However, every single day now, people are beginning to take advantage of this wonderful health care option that's available to them. And I think that by the election time, and way sooner actually, that this is not going to be a huge issue. In fact, I think
by the midterm elections.
By the midterm elections, actually, I think very soon it will become a plus for people because those good news stories are piling up.
And yet, Congressman Quigley, there's still reported concerns among